Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, a show about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My mission is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, is doing during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple crises: the global pandemic, Brexit, and of course, the ongoing and accelerating collapsing of capitalism, the state, and the climate through this decade. To do this, I need people like you, dear listener. Most of all, I need people who are in Leeds or who are from Leeds to come on this show and be my guests. So please join me and help me with this mission whenever and however you can. Critically, I will need people like you, dear listener, as financial backers. Please consider supporting or donating to this project. You can do so with a £1 monthly donation via either Patreon or Ko-fi, or you could donate any one-off amount to Working Hours via either Ko-fi or through the LibrePay button on the About page of Western Studios website. Thank you. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
That's one of those questions you always ask kids, and I don't know, when you're young, you always, you want to do something really exciting or dangerous or something like that. But I've never really sort of had a massive hankering after a vocation as such, to be a doctor or anything like that. I think at one stage I was very into athletics and running, so possibly to be an athlete at some stage, sort of around the time of Steve Ovett and Cow and people like that. And I used to do a lot of club running, but then people weren't professional in those days, and you've got to earn your crust. So it was a tricky one, really. I suppose not really having a burning desire to go do something. Like a lot of people say, I always run to this. Never really had a burning desire to be as you say, like a doctor, or people often say that,
astronaut or
exactly,
crane driver, fireman.
Although, I was young enough to remember them landing on the moon and stuff, and sort of just like sci-fi. And, where's my jetpack?
Yeah, we're still waiting for that.
Yeah.
You're listening to Series 3, Episode 35, and to my guest, Richard Clarkson. This is another Zoom interview recorded on the 10th of August, 2022. Hello, loves. Have you taken your joy? How have we all been enjoying our 2-digit temperatures in Leeds in November? Don't worry, I'm not going to go on about it too much and bring you down with reality. I will be back at the end of this episode, though, to beg for money. Richard Clarkson is a finance systems director who, at the time of recording, was 5 months into transitioning through to retirement and only working 1 day a week on a consultancy basis. Prior to that, Richard was responsible for the financial systems of National World plc, the owner of Yorkshire Post and a large number of other media brands in the UK. Richard has worked for National World and its predecessor companies for 25 years, initially on group finance and then in IT for the last dozen years or so. On this episode, my sound is crap. There's one interview coming up where my mic isn't even working on it, and I'm going to have to dub in all of my questions on that one. I'm holding the mic again on this interview. Apologies for the random noises. There's a break in there somewhere too for a few seconds where I think I lost the call, but I can't remember what happened and I can't be bothered looking it up. I'm annoyed about the audio quality of some of the interviews coming up, but it's easy for me to forget the conditions I have had to record this show in during the last few years. I really do think that the heat this year has also affected some recordings. It's odd because I know things will only get worse in the world. At the same time, I'm desperate for growth. Also, apologies if you follow me on Twitter. I know, I'm working on it. I want to apologise too for being so pass ag on some of the show's intros, and I want to start taking that out. I still can't work out how I want to humanize the machine of the intros. I don't want to be too corporate, but I don't want to be too much of an arse either, as I don't want to put too many people or businesses off being on the show. I am making and will continue to make lots of mistakes. Please bear with me. Speaking of coming on the show, please do. I'm still working on things. Some of the time I've been not putting together and putting out episodes, and if all the next few recordings go ahead, then I will have passed 50 interviews recorded for 2022. That's huge for me given the first 2 years, and if I can get all 50 of them out, well, wow, I'll be impressed. I will need people next year though. Please, especially if you disagree with me or feel that you're not or have not been represented on here, then please come on the show. I'm not trying to catch anyone out, and I do want to hear all Loina's experiences. To fix everything, we need everyone, and when everything goes, you might be all I have left. But I'm not getting into that now. Now let's get on with this episode of Working Hours with Richard Clarkson.
What is it that you do now then?
I'm sort of semi-retired, so I'm working part-time, 1 day a week, essentially on the consultancy for a transition. So as of the end of Feb, I didn't quite bring up the keyboard, but that's when I stopped working full-time work a day a week on a consultancy, just sort of answering questions and helping with the person who took over, transition into the role and passing on my experience and how would you do this and how did we do that. So it's 2 sort of different situations. So, things that you haven't had to train them in, existed and other advice on how to do new things with my experience from the job. Okay.
So how did you get into it?
How did I get into it? In sort of roundabout way, in that I trained as an accountant and then worked for a chartered accountancy firm, a couple of the big firms, and then moved out into industry and worked in finance for that company, and then was the secondee on quite a lot of finance IT projects, for whether updating and getting new finance systems, and then fully transitioned over into the IT department as looking after all of the financial systems for the company.
So did you come straight out of school then into accountancy training? Or
no, I went down to so I brought up in a small place in Cumbria. The only reason I would have heard of it is for the big gypsy fair they have there. And I came down to Leeds University a long time ago, and then got a job in Leeds after that.
So, and then the move into IT, was that like just various training that came up, or was that just something that became more of your role? Or
well, I'd done some sort of IT auditing, so to by the time I was trained to be an accountant, it was 80, so it was a big transition. Most companies by that stage had at least the first sort of, and the larger companies had already got IT systems. So to be able to audit them properly, you would pass the audit functions. You need to understand, and audit the actual systems, to make sure they're reliable and capable of holding and producing accurate records and accounts. So you had to learn about computer systems there, and then some specialist IT audit training. And then it was either once in role in finance, then sort of doing a lot of developments to try and get the most and develop systems we've got. And where with the changing business requirements, specking out what business requirements you wanted, the systems, other functionality you needed to cope with, and then working with vendors, and then suggesting enhancements, and then fully getting into working with the IT team. So
you were always quite sort of involved.
Yes, I always sort of found them interesting, and like everyone, and it's sort of it is a different, that now everybody all the time is works IT, sport, everything really. There's nothing that doesn't work in IT, and so it's been quite a big change of my work career really. And there were the odd companies that still had manual ledgers, and, but the fundamentals of how accountancy works, you've got to understand that as well as how computers work really.
Cool. Okay, so if we go into a little bit more then about what you're doing now, you'll remind me again of the name of the company, because I had a look at the website this morning.
Yeah,
I was looking at the sort of goals and aims of the company, and it looks quite interesting.
Yeah, the company's called National World PLC, who own a lot of media brands. They bought. Well, it's been a bit of a since I've worked for the company. It's been 5 different ownerships. The what they would call the legacy brands, but probably are still important, which you live from Leeds, obviously basis, is the Yorkshire Post and the Evening Post, and they own a lot of big legacy traditional papers in big cities like the Sheffield Star, Portsmouth News, the Scotsman, Lancashire Evening Post, but they've now each one of those has got their own websites and social media feeds, but they've also added to that a national brand called National World, and got expanded into some other areas with other city worlds, and obviously ultimately things will be entirely web-based rather than the legacy papers. So I don't really see those brands ever sort of dying off. There's so much heritage and things in there, particularly like Yorkshire Post. Most people in Yorkshire will have heard of that. Maybe not quite so much now, the Evening Post perhaps.
Yeah, gone are the days of the post sellers in town screaming in the evening. Yeah,
I remember those, and the sporting pink and green at Sheffield. You come out of the game and people would be selling those. When you got back to the station, the sports papers and whatever.
So, they're looking on their site of like very much at developing local media in a digital way. So, because obviously, the experience of digital has kind of totally decimated the print press industry. There are spaces for, print media still. People still like to have a physical copy of something. So what's kind of the focus and the strategy, and what's your part in it? I mean, are you doing a more kind of advisory position of like, this is how we handled this and this is how we handled this change? Or
no, in my specific role was more in a support function. So I'm the financial systems for finance, but so not so much on the publishing side at all really, or that side of thing. So some of the mundane stuff like the payroll and the actual accounting system itself, make sure everyone got paid, expenses, making sure that we build all the people who advertise with us and making sure they paid the bills on time. So that was looked after, and the news agents, and go back to the copies, make sure that they were all billed, and we got paid for those. But one or two other interesting things, sort of like reporting systems, and BI systems, things like that, and also with quite a lot of the, as I said, over the last few years, there've been sort of 5 different change of ownerships. Some of the latter ones were having to cope with that. Different changes in reporting, different emphasis in reporting, and different sets of books, different integrations. So a lot of work, but not quite so much on the sort of company strategy or publishing strategy. Although obviously the senior in the past have been on a lot of sort of senior management teams, a level down where you would go and listen to what they're saying and try and make sure that all your teams and things were engaged and informed of what the company was trying to do.
Yeah, and then just the implementation and
yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to some questions then. So if I'll start off with COVID. So I want to take you back to just before we did lockdown, and sort of think about, were you doing more work, less work at the time?
Yeah.
Were you able to were you furloughed, or like, how did it go for you?
No, with ours, it was was a busy time for us in that we'd had to essentially work to mobilise all our staff. Mm-hmm. So we were looking in IT, there weren't anybody who was furloughed, and in the teams that were supported, my team particularly supported the finance, there were not many were furloughed, but I would say most were still working. So, because obviously the people who were left would need to pay them, and we had to make sure they got cash in to keep going, etc. So, look at the profitability and trends and make sure how the business was performing, which has to come from the financial system. So, we were looking in our major systems were accessible through remotely. So we sort of knew this was coming and had to get the rest of the systems available to be, so people could log on to them from home, and then had to make sure that everyone was equipped with laptops and all that sort of stuff, and then put together training guides and talk them through it and show them, and then
do that remotely as well.
Yeah, and check. And to a certain extent, it went remarkably smoothly. Really, we had one or two sort of teething issues, more people getting used to working from home. It's a different sort of way of working. I don't know if you interview many IT people, but it meant that people had to a certain extent, follow the procedures that we want them to do. So, we have help desks, and when you're in the office, it's far. Sometimes it's easier to come around and stand by a desk and say, "Can you help me with this?" or "Can you come around and sort this for me?" Whereas clearly, if you're working from home, they can't. So everyone has to, be much more compliant with logging tickets, and the team then working through those and helping people, logging onto their laptops and, taking charge and talking through what they need to do and what have you, or having video conferences. So, but surprisingly, it all went pretty smoothly, really.
Was it a big increase in volume of work for you, though, initially?
It was, yeah. It was a big sort of effort to get everyone able to work from home and get them all settled in and tested and, distribute out. Or laptops, or get them to be able to take their stuff from home and get it all tested and working. But once we're in, it sort of works. I mean, then
it's done, and then it's there now.
Yes, and I think of my team, we obviously then gave them the choice. I think all of my sort of team, or ex-team really, have actually stayed working from home, working remotely.
I mean, how did you feel about? Had you worked from home before? Was it a big change for you?
Yes, yeah, it was. It was a big change in that I hadn't always been into the office, if that's the right word. Although lastly, one of the in my role, one of the things was to actually centralise a lot of the IT systems. We had a lot of and consolidate them all. So I spent long periods working in different company offices. So it was different working, from home. I mean, particularly in Leeds, I don't know whereabouts you're based, but I personally live in North Leeds, and with students and term time when the kids are back at school, it can take 45 minutes, an hour to get through over the ring road to Headingley, and process now down Whitehall Road. So by the time to avoid the traffic, getting up and going in early, and then by the time you get back at night, 6:30, 7. By the time you get back home, if you go to work late, so you've got an hour and a half, 2 hours of your life back, really. So that's
a day. Yeah.
It's a huge thing. The traffic in Leeds, it is quite horrific, really, from certain areas of commuting. And that was a big change. You're not going to work, not a clock watch. You don't turn your computer on at 9 and 5:30. But even if you don't, you've an hour and a half to sort of play with. So it was a big change, and big change in balance. And I think it was the same for a lot of my staff. So some commuting from Wakefield and Harrogate and things like this. So with they sort of played fair, and as I say, I don't think the clock on at clock off. I've so been quite lucky in that respect. In that they've made big savings and changes to their life as I had. So and I don't think they'll ever go back. Really, I think there's a lot of pressure for people to go back in, but I think for a company level, like a lot of companies, they support it in as long as people can actually do the work and are as productive. They make massive savings on office space. And more motivated, less tired staff. And there's a lot of things for it. But there are downsides, obviously. You don't have that face-to-face contact. Meetings are slightly different. You don't. In the past, you'd be in the office and someone would just sort of, I've got a problem with this, or you deal with it, and you say, we did that a month ago, and this was how you solved it. Whereas it gets raised that, we have chats, video calls, those sort of ways, online chats and things.
Have you gone down the Teams route?
A Google House, so it's sort of hangouts and chats and whatever. Meet, typically,
Yeah, so did you manage to, did you have a space separate, or was it kind of like working in your kitchen, or?
I was lucky. I did have a spare room, although we had the house done. So it was a bit of a struggle while having all the builders in. But as you say, I've got a home office now, so the kids especially since I'm a kids home, so just have to share it.
And were you pretty good at sort of keeping the distinction between your work time and your free time, or did you find you were doing more or extra hours, or?
It was difficult. In as I said, I think we can't remember the timeline of it, but I think we probably had some. We were either just taken over or had just been taken over by National World during that. So I was particularly busy and a lot of changes and new things to do during that. But probably no more so than before. I think there's certain things you've got to do, and there's a multi-cycle, and you've got certain tasks that you have to do, and the rest are. We've always had working in the area, have sort of projects and things to do. One of the things while we're off, we did achieve quite a lot. As I say, I think we're taking over by National World. We integrated into them new ways of reporting, to change banks, and we had to change our credit card provider, who takes all the credit card payments. So we had to do that, working from home. So, some big stuff to do, which, went pretty smoothly and managed to get it done. So,
Yeah. And in terms of revenue and so on, how was your kind of market at the time? Were you in quite worrying territory, or was it sort of steady, or did it go up? Or?
No, it went down massively. A big drop. Big amounts of the income was from entertainments and what's on and features, those sort of things. So, so shops, they were advertising, cinemas, pubs, clubs, all those sort of things. And an awful lot of sort of SMEs. Hairdressers, nail bars, there's just general services that we weren't doing. Big drop. And people weren't travelling. So although circulation is probably about a third of the revenue, so they dropped, so people weren't buying a paper on the way to work or on the way home from,
So, has it kind of picked up, recovered now? Is things?
It's higher than it was, but not back to
like pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So, obviously you've now got a home office. So part of the question as well is how has it changed the work for you? But that's largely just sort of, is it just largely the working from home element? So has it changed other things?
Not particularly in my particular function. No, it's the same. But That's changed in that, supporting the same customers, internal customers, but they, again, are all at home, and it's in a certain way they are all having to work in the same way, because that's the way you have to work to get onto the systems that way. So some of the other issues we used to have gone away, but you just get new ones, really. But yeah, not particularly in our way, no.
So since we have Brexited, has there been any change in your work, in your role?
No, not specifically to do with that, in that all the papers are in the UK. I think Donny's had some slight complications with on some papers in Northern Ireland, which there was restrictions as to what you could or couldn't send over there. But it was more sort of IT equipment, that you couldn't take laptops across things like this because of the potential for them to go across border. And anecdotally, good friends with one of the managers over there, and he'd had issues about his servicing his car because it was on Clarkson to UK and taking it across and getting it do it. So I think he had to drive it across and then get it repaired in Glasgow and drive it back. But it was awkward to get done. But no, generally not any big problems.
Right, we'll do the climate change question. So I use climate change to kind of stand in for kind of wider environmental problems as well. But yeah, in your work, in your role, and maybe across your career as well, I mean, it might have been different at different times. Is there anything you can do in your work in terms of mitigation, adaptation, and so on with regards to climate change?
No, not particularly in ours. Obviously, I don't think as tangentially as IT sort of stop people. I don't think in the old days, people have habits, but people used to, I guess, print off reams and reams and reams of reports, and a little concertina paper, and they'd have all the, they'd run a report of all the debtors and have it on paper. And every month, the people used to have management meetings, and they'd have print off copies of every report and then hand them around to everyone who attended the meeting. Now they just have a laptop and you can just look at the reports on there, and PDFs or everything, and just email them around. Similarly, we used to send all of our customers paper invoices. Now an awful lot get electronic invoices, and we email them out to them. So yeah, that's, I guess, it's quite a bit of environmental sort of saving there, and we're not destroying forests of paper, although you'd hope also it's recyclable. But and think about, we used to have photocopying in every office. And, I think at one stage we were trying to take all of those out and all of the printers out in a lot of offices. It's sort of the exception now for someone to print or be allowed into a specific AD group to be able to print. People just print PDF and have a look at it, or download it into Excel and then look at what you wanted to do in the reports in there. So that's probably the biggest thing, I would think, in ours. I guess the other one is, used to have everyone had a massive server room which was air conditioned, and it was all there were loads of racks of computers in there. Now it's all cloud based, but all you're doing is passing that off to Google, and they've got some place, which is so it's just moving it somewhere else. But they are more powerful, so there'll be less of them, but they've still got to be chilled and what have you. They're running electricity at home and stuff. But so there's that. But the speed of them, and when you empty offices out and you go in, and there's always the IT room with a graveyard of old tech in there. So what it's useless, and every 5 years they double, or every 2 years they double, or probably faster. What do you do with all the old equipment? I guess you're not allowed to landfill it now, technically, are you? But you see these films where they ship it out to India and they smash it with hammers and melting it off the metal in it. But what does happen to it?
Nothing good. I mean, some of it can be sort of recovered and recycled, and I think more of
They
that.
get gold out of them. I saw. Yeah.
It's like you can get more gold out of mobile phones now than you can out of mines.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask then, so sort of, I'm wondering how far back careers-wise, like in terms of payments, have you always been dealing with payments then?
Yes, yeah. Definitely, yeah, from both in and out, yes.
So has there always been an electronic element then in terms of your, like the work that you're doing with the payments? Like, have you always been paid electronically? I suppose there would have been some cash and checks.
No, the first sort of big projects I did here was quite high tech at the time. Was actually having remittance scanning equipment in. So an awful lot of people would pay us by checks. So, and then you had a bit like a credit card slip or invoice, and then they sent them all in, and we had a team of people who would separate them off their advices and put them through a big scanner, and then bundle them up a step before, where we encoded them all and put since like a stamp on, and then sent them off to the bank. And they went off and cleared them all, where we'd also scan the remittances, and then so we could, paying invoices 1 through to 10 on their accounts, and then you do that, and then OCR'd them all and corrected them and typed them in where I hadn't read them properly. So that was quite advanced at the time. Over time, we still get a few checks in, but the number, both will the businesses got a lot smaller, and the amount of people sending checks in has got much smaller. But we've adapted that to deal with them, sending them just electronically. So instead of having what you did with a paper, you'd sort of scan it and turn it into a TIFF. Whereas after they send you a TIFF, that's great. You just miss out the first bit, and then it obviously asks that to get the information out of it.
Because I remember when I started working, getting paid in the little brown paper bag, working in a bar. And so like, can you remember kind of moving, like when you first got paid electronically?
We'll always have paper. I never actually got, well, apart from part-time jobs, but in the world of work, it always was sort of by bank transfer into my bank.
So for most people, there seems to be like more and more, as part of your work, getting involved in social media, either producing it yourself or, ended up being in part of it or something to do with it, or even just on a networking basis or anything like that. How much time do you have to spend in your role on social media or doing social media work? And is that time a worthwhile investment for you? Does it give a good return?
In work, probably none in that I wasn't sort of involved in that within our team. But so we do sort of an extension of that. They did have a Google Plus thing at work. We just sort of dealt with the chats really, through that rather than Hangouts and did them, but not on a work sense per se. Actually, you pick me up from social media, so on a more of a social sense, but not in a work sense really. All of our newspaper brands do have social media. Obviously, the Yorkshire Post, even Post, they have guys who both work ones of those accounts, and the other sort of big area where they sort of got into. I mean, I don't know how involved you are, but it does have quite an impact in that. We had James Mitchison, from the editor of the Yorkshire Post. He, there were two sort of big things which were sort of brought home the power of social media recently. Do you remember during the election, there was all the issue of the Leeds, the LGI, whereby there was the boy on the floor sort of thing, and he issued the story, and then there was the huge, to be fair, Tory-backed backlash against it, wasn't there? And there was and he came out basically calling it fake news and a liar and cancelled such. It was a huge whipped up storm about it all. And I seen him give talks on it, about social media and the impact it had. realizing how damaging the power of it really, so it's a two-edged sword. So there's that aspect of which, both his own personal account and on Yorkshire Post corporate account. So that was one aspect, and had another recent with being quite vocal about Boris Johnson and levelling up and his betrayal of the North and powerhouse. So he's quite sort of passionate on those things on both his personal and Yorkshire Post account. So he's there, and then there are other examples where I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing in that there was the guy who was, I forgot, Phil. I can't his name now, but he was synonymous for Phil Hay. He was synonymous with Leeds United because obviously he worked the Evening Post and he was a football reporter, and he was probably getting more hits personally than Leeds United's account. So it's very. Then he eventually left and went off and joined the Atlantic. So that sort of made his name through becoming Mr. Leeds United, which is sort of dangerous too, I think, because did that generate traffic for the Evening Post, and did he make any money for the Evening Post? There's no obviously new people on after us, Liam Wobshaw does it all now, but that's being a big city with a big football team. That is a big driver of social media traffic and web traffic to our sites. But similarly for Portsmouth and Sunderland and Preston and Blackpool and Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United, so they are big drivers of traffic through our social media. Probably as much as the news, although it's been a very newsworthy few years since Brexit, really, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah, and that, and also at the local level, that was. Yeah, it's not like it's all happening in one place.
No.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean that's interesting in terms of, you really widen the scope for, I suppose, for the brand with, because there are fans of football and, around the world, people are fans of football teams around the world. Yeah. So that really opens up lots of space. But then in terms of revenue, well, I suppose then it's to ads, isn't it? Or, sales funnels and so on. Yeah. If there was a universal basic income, so if you were getting an allowance that paid, enough so that you could live, would it change your work? Like, would you still work? If you would still work, would you still be doing what you do now? And if you'd still be doing what you do now, would you do it differently?
Yeah, I suppose it's my sort of, where I am now in my career, it probably wouldn't change things. Would it have changed things earlier?
I mean, how do you think about getting the pension? Like,
I'm not going to get a state one for a while, unfortunately, enough to. Well, I don't know, who knows with the energy crisis where it's going, but it's could be a tricky few years. It would certainly help and take away some of the worries. I suppose there's different aspects to it. One is touch wood, I've been lucky to have decent health through your career. If you haven't forbid that there's the stories on there where average savings of people is 200 quid or something, then if you're ill, then it can be catastrophic, can't it? And very early in your career, it was two kids. Fortunately, someone's managed to get a job, but it is very difficult. And the choice is so expensive to live. It is that would give you. I think it would certainly make people might make different choices. It's trying to put it in the right words. In that, if your voice doesn't talk back on, then perhaps people do something different than more in time. I mean, it's a very different one in that I think the world of work is people, unfortunately, with education and where they come from, unless they happen to work for a tradesman or something. A lot of people don't really know what work is, what it's like, and it's changed so much than, from your grandparents and people, particularly now working from home, people don't go into an office and they don't wear a suit and they don't go and work in a mill or something. It has completely changed, and the job I'm just leaving, that wouldn't have even existed when I was 20 years ago. The world of IT is, even the 15 years of working in IT is totally changed. Cloud-based, remote working it's a world away from servers and even thin clients and thick clients. It's totally changed. Mobiles, just saying, you can almost do your job on, you're just using a mobile phone or a tablet now. It doesn't really matter where you're based. Dialed in from. This sounds dreadful, but I've dialed in and someone made a massive copy. I was on holiday from the beach in Italy somewhere. Shouldn't have to do that, but it's possible, is what I'm saying. And that is how it's totally changed. So in a way, if you had that, people would perhaps have a chance to experience things and try things more without sort of being committed to making that plunge into making a big career choice that could possibly later regret. People do. I think going forward, I can't see. I've worked this firm for 25 years. I can't see that happening for the next generation or even the generation behind me. I'm going to work for somebody for 25 years, unless it's their own firm. It's just, there isn't that commitment from the employer. And, there's nothing really to be gained from it, really, I wouldn't have thought these days. Difficult one.
Did you have to pay for a lot of your sort of training through the career?
No, I was one of the lucky generation. The degree was completely unrelated, but that was, you could afford to do that, there was no fees, you got a grant. Well, we didn't get a full grant, but back to work. But you weren't saddled with 50 grants worth of debt, and then out closing non-vocational courses, according to Sunak. So it's a different world. And then obviously the chartered accountancy firm paid for, had to work whilst trying to be an accountant, and then I've had other training through work, but not sort of formal training as such, since then. But different now.
Okay, so this is going to be a strange one, obviously, because again, you're winding down the amount of work that you're doing already. So the question is, if there were, so you can change any three things about your work. So what would they be?
So this is a difficult one. Winding down, what would I change?
I mean, you could think you could think retroactively, like across your career. I mean, would there been anything particular that, or even like working from home earlier would have been better, or like anything you want, really?
Yeah, I think that the working from home was a bit of a revelation. Probably have done that earlier. Difficult one. Three things would change, really. Yeah. I mean, in one of the things I might, it's one of the things I don't know. I mean, I've generally I've sort of been quite lucky in a way, in that I've enjoyed what I've done.
I mean, has it ever been like, I'm not saying ever been, but like you say, you've been quite happy. I mean, obviously, to stay in a place for 25 years and you've not had an urge to run off, or like, I really want to do this, or I'm saving up enough money to do this. So there's obviously something that's kept you there and kept you sort of happy in the role. Yeah,
it's been challenging, and in a way, sort of been a lot of big projects, a lot of change which you had to do. And probably at certain points, there were points where we were taking over for the first time, and it's some sort of inklings that it's one of those weird things in that as the company's got smaller and been taken over, each so it's bad news for somebody, but a lot of the time it's been some of it I was sort of leading it and suggesting ways of doing it, and using technology to generate efficiencies. But at one point when that first step, they're probably, in retrospect, you never know what could happen. I've been successful at a house, and I'm sitting in my own home office and retired early. But some people who work with went off and got new jobs and ended up with, on the face of it, earning much more money and being much more successful. But you do make other balances in there. I've not done that. My brother as well, he spent a lot of time traveling around the world and doing consultancy stuff, but he spent a lot of time away from his young children, which I didn't, and that I wouldn't change that at all. But if will the work potentially could have been, if I'd taken that chance and there was that opportunity to, the firm been taken over, move off and do something completely else, it could have been, even though it might have been disastrous, but that was possibly a chance for could have done it and maybe been slightly less risk averse and gone off and done that. But
it could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been disastrous. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You never know, do you? So you just have to be grateful for the good bits.
Yeah.
What was I going to say then? So like hours wise then, I mean, how would you have felt doing a 4-day week? Would that have been better for you? I mean, obviously losing the commute was quite nice for you. Would it have been better to do sort of less hours? Do you feel you would have been, do you get that idea? Do you buy into that idea of being more productive in a shorter amount of time, or?
Not really, in that I had some experience of that. Well, not directly, but my wife, she went down to 3 days, but maybe that's too much. And even 4 days, I think somewhere between those two is a sweet spot, in that she was doing 4, but basically she found out the more or less she worked much longer hours, and they're almost having to do a full day's work in 4 days. Whereas with 3 days, it was a bit different in that, appreciated that you weren't in 2 days and that, you could actually cut your workload. Whereas with a 4-day, people just tried to cram a 5-day workload onto her in 4 days. Yeah. But no, it is generally the, up until I'd made the choice to go, we've still been fantastically busy, and a lot of big projects, I said, and fairly recently just changed like the credit card. People who processed all the credit card receipts. That was like a massive project, and reorganizing all of with the new company coming in, how they wanted to report things, and reorganizing, going out from something like 7 to 5, and then to 4, and different numbers of divisions, and to recode all the products and account codes and everything. So it's been a lot of work. It's I don't think it was either a choice of either taking the step and stepping away, or I don't think I could have gone down to 4 days because, take VR or something, because there is a big role there, and it's nearly doing.
In terms of your favourite parts of the job or of working, are you more sort of project based? Are you like you like to get your teeth into something that's over a period?
I like those. You like to feel that you're doing. Provide some of them. You're providing efficiencies. That was. I mean, latterly, obviously, some of it has been. I've enjoyed sort of not quite mentoring. Well, it is in a way, really, in that we're able to restructure the team and bring young members of the team in, and sort of be able to recruit them, and then bring them through. About 3 who've also progressed massively in the role, and then work with them to help them sort of grow and expand, and then they've all left and got much better jobs out of it. They've all been grateful and been said nice things about it. They would say that when they're leaving, but what I mean, they've all been enjoyed the time working in the team, and given that opportunity. So that's been good over the last few years. So yeah.
I mean, have you seen that examples of people, because that just made me think of, there's a quote that I like of what if I train people and they leave, and the other side of it being, what if you don't and they stay?
Yes.
And like the idea that, so, those people that were trained up, they've gone on to other things, potentially could come back to the organization with a whole bunch of other new skills and things that they've learned and bring those into the organization. Like, have you seen that sort of happen before? Forgot to press record.
So in a way, it was good in that it was a sort of good publicity internally. In that, one of the ways they bring people into the IT team is through apprenticeships into, but then they're just the general support team. And then these guys have moved across from that into a more specialist finance support team, which with much more, rather than just being on a help desk and sorting out general problems out, there, much more specialized problems, and then open them out to doing project work and other more specialist skills, SQL and other IT skills. So it was, good publicity for me and the team, and with other movements, we've had 2 other recruits from there. So they spread the good word, really. So it's worked in a way. So yeah. So and in a way, it's better to have a happy team than people who are working because they have to and can't move on. And you said no. It's their life. If I've been lucky in that way. That having happy, motivated people is better than not, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not stressed, but not too stressed. Because you do need a level of pressure and a level of stress, I think.
Yes,
but not too much.
It's not give them enough rope so they can hang themselves. It's just enough rope, Yeah.
And I suppose with your secondants, I mean, you've had that experience of sort of going to another place and seeing how it's done there, and things that you can bring to the new place or take back to the other place. So I mean, it's good to have that. It's obviously like my work, I've done so many different jobs, and like I've done a lot of temping, so pretty much different jobs in different years, and you see inside so many companies and so many different ways of doing things, and some people that do something very well and not other things not so well, and it's interesting to see that. But I suppose over a long time in one place, like you say, it's those moments of change that stand out, like the takeovers or the particularly big projects. They're the things that, because I've stayed in one role. I was there for like 10 years, and it was an admin role, and I felt like, because on the day-to-day I didn't really do much, you just did stuff on the computer. But then when you went and looked back over everything that you've been involved with and projects and so on, it's like, I've done loads actually, but it just didn't feel like that at the time. I mean, do you have a similar kind of, like when you think back, if you wrote down everything that you'd been involved with over time, I mean, would it just be a massive list that went on for ages?
Yeah, definitely. I've been, an awful lot happened. We occasionally meet up with people and reminisce, and there's a few, one or 2 other people, and you just think, crikey, it's the cliche, isn't it? You could write a book about this. You've met some, but there's been, I think the thing that really stands out is probably the people you meet, and that's probably, it really is. The people sort of make the place, and they make your life worth living, or they can make it miserable, really. We had to work with, but there've been some good people and some bad people to work with, really horrendous people. But generally, it's the good people that you remember, really. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I don't think I've got. So there's other questions that I'm kind of working on, but I don't really want to throw them into the mix yet. because I haven't got them totally figured out. But I will do the thing of kind of throwing it over to you. So if there's anything that you want to discuss or talk about, anything that we've not covered now.
Oh, really? No. Sort of fairly open. Yeah.
So, I mean, just out of curiosity then, so retirement wise, like, do you have any particular plans? Do you think you will take to not working, or will you have to get involved in something?
I don't, so far, it's all sort of fairly new. Getting into it in that, obviously, we moved house and just having the house done up, so did take up a lot of the time. But so doing other sort of projects as such, but whether they will turn out to be paid or not at the moment. You probably picked me up off Instagram there, so I've done, quite relatively active on that, so quite into the photography. One of the pictures I've got is was selected for a local coffee house, and obviously publicity for them, but they have an exhibition. They have a lot of entries. Everyone put in, free to put in your best photos of Leeds, and us to get one into there, which is opening next week. So I've done a couple of photography courses. I've got another Zoom call tonight on that, but so I'm enjoying that. Like that. So I've been interested in trying just based having an account is really just lots of other photographs, but just based on photographs of Leeds. It's interesting. I try not to just do there's only so many photos of the town hall you can do. Try and do different stuff. Just general.
And the corn exchange.
Yeah.
And the markets.
Exactly. So that get a reasonable amount of that. So I'm enjoying that and just working on photography skills. Spend a bit of time on Twitter, just with the stuff on there. But the original aim was, like everything, just go off and spend some time sort of travelling and relaxing. Bit short of cash with the house move, but I've got the sort of sports. I've got to watch a lot of football. I'm doing some volunteering for the Rugby League World Cup.
Okay.
Should do is postponed from last year, so it's back on in October, November. So I've got tickets for a lot of games in there, and then doing the volunteering for that. Weirdly enough, it's the women's ones I've got offered over at York. So, but it's quite big, so it'll be interesting and give something back. Maybe do a bit more of that. So that goes. So different things. A few sort of lectures and things. Just keep yourself busy and
keep so very active.
Really. It's different when it's so sunny and it's been nice. But a bit winter when it's snowy and you can't really get out. Then
that's it. Yeah. So when are you actually due to finish up then?
Next February.
Next February.
Yeah.
So you'll have it'll still be cold, but you'll have something to look forward to. Well. Yeah. Hopefully look forward to, and it won't be just everything on fire.
No.
Thank you again to Richard for being my guest. Thanks again to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. And of course, most of all, thank you to you, my dear listener. I do actually appreciate you listening, and I hope you got something out of working hours. And if so, that you come back for more of it. I know where to get it if you want it. If there's anything or anyone that you'd like to see on this show, or if you have any questions or queries for me, then drop me a message and I can answer it for you on the show if you'd like. Or bung us a donation and ask for a shout out, ask for a segment, make suggestions. I can take notes. I can also ignore them. If you like what I'm trying to do with this show and you've enjoyed some of these episodes, then why not get involved to make them that bit better? If you leave it all to me, it'll only stay crazy and it'll just get worse. You have to keep me in check. You can support Working Hours by becoming a monthly subscriber on Patreon or Ko-fi for as little as £1 a month, where there will be bonus content and behind-the-scenes info going up. Probably more mad rambly stuff, but hopefully you'll be able to feed into the show on there and help me to shape it as it goes along. /Working Hours Pod on both of those donation sites to donate and subscribe. You'll find me, you know how the internet works. Any rando can donate to Working Hours via either PayPal or LibraPay. In fact, LibraPay, you can actually give support to Working Hours for like a penny a week. Can't be bothered checking the details on that. Go have a look on the website and let me know if I'm wrong. Hell, just say hello. That's fine. That's great. Send me an article on something and ask me to talk about it. Whatever. It'd be nice for other listeners to know there are more of their kind out there, would it not? I know there's some of you. Who are you? I don't know. Nor do you. You only know about you. You don't know about anyone else. If you have listened to the first episode, you will have heard my opinion on podcast hosts then. But I am one now, and this is the job, talking shit. But this is what the interviews are for. To not have that. To listen to think about, to reflect on, to broaden and deepen your knowledge, to share experience and learning, and hopefully to entertain you as well. I want this show to be able to run off lots of small local donations, ideally, but I'll take whatever I can get for the show. I need the shows to be making about 400 or 500 quid an episode to cover the time, the investment and the work I have and do put into these. Even when they're a bit rubbish technically sometimes, this would allow me to be compensated and allow me to invest in both marketing and in production improvements for the show. Perhaps it might even lead to someone being employed to help with making the show as well. That would be nice, as long as they enjoyed it and got paid enough as well. Pipe dreams aside, I would really, really like to increase the number of Patreons I have right now from 4 to at least 8 before the end of this war. Sorry, did I say war? I mean this year. Ideally doubling the amount of £1 and £5 subscribers so that it can pay for the podcast hosting of this show just as an initial fundraising goal. I posted on the website the other day and shared it to LinkedIn and Twitter regarding my ambition to get out 3 episodes a week the next few weeks, and how much being able to get at least £10 in additional donations to the show each time that I did that would really help me in doing that. If you can hear this, you can afford a tenner, and if you like it, I have done this 65 times now. That's got to be worth something, right? If you'd like me to make some greater effort towards improving the sound quality of this show before that time, then please help me get at least 70 or 80 quid in donations to cover the costs of a year of Zoom that I bought to save money and ensure, so long as the power and internet are still on, that I could keep recording the show over the next year. Spent the money while I had it kind of thing. If I can't cover that in donations, then I'm sticking with Zoom for financial efficiency. It may not be the best, but at least I can still make the podcast with it and without having to spend any more cash on that until next year. Anyway, thanks again for your patience with my nonsense, and do return for the next episode. It will be worth it. I have a treat for you. I'm not telling you when it will drop or what it is, because I don't want to make any promises I can't keep at the minute. Just keep your eyes peeled and listen out. I would also like to get at least 1 member on Ko-fi this year as well. Hell, let's go for 3 before Christmas. You can follow this show on Twitter at WorkingHours3 and on Instagram at WorkingHoursPodLeads. Use the hashtag WorkingHoursPodLeads to stay up to date on when new episodes are being released, to DM me with your questions, or most importantly, to get in touch if you'd like to be my guest on this show. Please do chuck in anything you can to help the show grow. Go to kofi.com/workinghours and join me there for £1 a month, or you can make a one-off donation of whatever amount. You can also go to patreon.com/workinghourspod to support Working Hours, again from as little as £1 a month. Why not be super awesome and join both? Do something new and something different. Remember to like, share, follow and subscribe to Working Hours. That's me. Cheers ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, leads. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Please like Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Leeds, are you considering taking the plunge into podcasts or audio content? Then think Western Studios for support, advice, and guidance on getting it made. At Western Studios, you work with a real-life loiner who is actually in Leeds. Not a piece of software, not a course of articles or a series of live chats and video courses, but me, a person in physical place-based reality. If you want to work with me to make your podcast or any digital audio content in Leeds, whether it's for your own cause, your publicity campaigns, to promote your products, increase your sales, or just to create your own passion projects, then get in touch with me, Western Studios, now. Don't wade through vapid articles and videos and podcasts about how to make podcasts by disembodied virtual people on the web. Get on with making your podcast now, and then when it gets hard and expensive and it all goes wrong, which it will, then call Western Studios to make your podcast with you or even for you. Western Studios will take on your podcast's boring, time-consuming and painful admin, recording, editing, transcription, whatever. Tell me about your podcasting pain points and I can make it all better for you. I feel your pain. For a charge, I will share it. Remember, podcast work is work. Leeds businesses, Leeds campaigns, Leeds brands. Got an inkling that you'd like a podcast but don't know where to start? Contact Western Studios at makemypodcast@western-studios.com and we'll start making your podcast straight away. The first hour of arranged consultation and pre-production time is free. £25 an hour after that for editing, recording, production. I can also arrange hefty discounts for the right projects. So tell me your idea and your budget and I'll tell you what I can do for you. What do you have to lose? Time. That's what. Time is running out. The best time to make a podcast was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. Writers in Yorkshire, what are you doing with your lives? Hopefully you're writing. Well, I know there are listeners out there who want to hear great original writing performed as audio content that is about and for and has been made in Leeds. How do I know this? Because I'm one of them loiners what wants it. Help me make your old screenplays, unpublished novels, unperformed plays, stories, poems, and performances, whatever you got, baby, and make it as podcast content. Is your work arty, salacious, pulpy, strange? Good. Is it unfinished? Good. I can help you with that too. I can work with you to find actors, musicians, and voiceover artists and quickly realize your projects. I get practice making the shows and you get a finished, performed and published version of your writing. Save yourself the hassle and the headache of making your podcasts on your own by working with me instead.